Welcome to Voices of the Community. I'm your host, Eric Estrada. This episode is part one of a highlight compilation from season 1 of our special series where arts meet impact and our co-production with Arts for a Better Bay Area, featuring interviews with summit attendees and presenters from our 2023 The State of Our Arts and Culture Organization Summit. Join our summit roaming reporter Isa Nakazawa as we highlight the voices of panelists and discussions that happened during the summit workshops, which focused on rebuilding our communities through the arts.
Hey, this is Isa Nakazawa with Voices of the Community, and we're here at Arts for a Better Bay Area Summit 2023. Thank you so much for talking to us. You did wonderful on the stage tonight. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are for the folks who don't know, and what brings you here today?
Absolutely. I'm Maria Jenson, and I'm the director of SOMARTS Cultural Center, and I've been a part of Arts for a Better Bay Area for about, I would say, 7 years. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I want to thank you because I really feel like as an artist who's living in the Bay Area and has for so many years, like over 20 years, it felt like the passion and the fire that I feel like has been missing from the conversation you've like channeled for all of us. So I just want to thank you because I feel like, to your point that you were making, that I want you to somewhat summarize about the power of narrative in the opposite direction, where like we are starting to internalize the doom loop in narrative as people living in San Francisco and perpetuating it. So if you can kind of summarize that point around like what is something to be wary of around internalizing this narrative that the media's created, and what is another narrative that we can kind of internalize or project out to combat that, or to at least talk back to it.
Yeah, that's a very, very deep question, and I think it has to also do with how we are valuing artists and how we're valuing arts community and some of the smaller arts organizations. And so what I was trying to say here is that instead of us looking to tech or looking to some other corporate structure to find support and partnership, we need to recognize that we're the reason why these, tech organizations and businesses want to come to San Francisco. So we are already here. We're the stakeholders of the community, and if anything, the partnerships need to go kind of in a different direction, where businesses and corporations are asking how they can participate with what's happening in arts and culture here. So how do we find our voice? How do we change that narrative? And changing the narrative means we just need to go back and revisit San Francisco's history, its actual history of art, and including like so many artists that have emanated from here who have gone on to worldwide recognition. They are all grassroots artists that started here. And so San Francisco has this great ability to actually create a whole generation after generation of incredible artists. And these artists are what is changing the world, because art leads to open minds. And if we want to further the ideals of democracy, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that the artists who are literally helping us to interpret our lives and helping us to see other lives and helping us to understand, these are the people that we need to be funding first and foremost. And we need to now get our business community to understand, for capital, the biggest producer of what's been happening locally, surprisingly, the arts are a big production of revenue.
If 2020 taught us nothing else, it taught us that there is no permanence in this world. So just because an organization existed for 20 years doesn't mean it needs to exist for another 20 more. Just because an organization existed for 20 years doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist for 20 more. But I think those are questions that you should grapple with. Not just because we existed, therefore we should exist. What are you existing for? Who are you existing for? Who are you speaking to? Who are you speaking for? If it's just yourself and your board members who are well-heeled, then you probably shouldn't exist. Because if that's all you're here for, is to pay salaries and to express how your board particularly feels about a particular issue or the beauty that they particularly want to see, maybe that's not what you're here to do any longer. Maybe it is. But I think these are things that we need to talk about. These are things that we need to grapple with. So The San Francisco Arts Commission is focused on highlighting and uplifting the voices, art, and stories of BIPOC, marginalized, and underrepresented artists and arts organizations, and remain committed to our core mission of cultural equity, lowering barriers, and improving access to our programs and resources, and promoting the arts as a vehicle for positive social change. We have 4 city-owned facilities and 3 virtual cultural centers. We've increased the operating budgets for each cultural center by 10%. We're investing over $40 million towards seismic capital improvements at the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts and the African American Arts and Culture Complex. We're ready to partner and provide support in recovery efforts. The Arts Commission is poised and ready to collaborate and partner with other arts agencies, other city arts agencies that are spearheading downtown recovery efforts, and will work with them to facilitate and create opportunities for artists and arts organizations. We have to figure out a new way of engaging with our community and our patrons. The old way isn't coming back. So we can't keep kind of beckoning, thinking about the way it used to be, but we have to think about what it will be. And we need to have citywide festivals. I mean, we live in the Bay Area, right? I mean, how is Austin getting an edge on us right now? They shouldn't, right? South by Southwest, why wasn't that here? But we need to have something like that here, an iconic festival across the entire Bay, so that people come from all over the world to experience what we all know to be the rare jewel that San Francisco and the Bay Area is. We have access to the world's greatest tech companies. What the COVID pandemic taught us was that we can't depend on one source of revenue stream to remain sustainable. In order for performing arts to remain stable, we must embrace technology, just as sports had to do at one point in time. Now, technology and sports have been so interrelated, we don't even think that at one point in time they were separate entities. But in that same way, if you think about the performing arts, particularly the way we engage in performing arts, we've really not moved far beyond how we were operating in the 50s or the 40s or the 30s or the 60s, and here we are in 2023, and we're still have the same mode. We still want subscribers. We still want people to stand in line. We still want people to come sit in a seat. I think those times we have to re-examine them. So I believe that the future will see a democratization of the arts and culture sector. Most live performing arts will be accessible on flat screens for the general public. I think the live experience will become a premium experience. Some would argue that it already has. If you look at some of the prices that you have to pay to go to some of the big organizations, one could easily say that they've already locked out most of the people. So then the people can't experience those art forms on anything. Now, what if the people could experience those art forms on flat screens from the comfort of their living rooms, on their couches, for a digital subscription fee? I think that's the area where we need to move into. That's the area of growth. If the pandemic taught us anything, it taught us that there was a possibility there. So these are the new ways we have to think. And it doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't mean that our theaters will be empty, because those theaters will be packed with people that want to see the live experience. But it means that a greater number of people will be able to experience the art forms that they're not able to experience now. A democratization, a literal democratization of the art form. So I think people will gladly purchase that experience. They'll gladly grab it. They will like it, and they'll believe in it. I firmly believe that this is something we can do. And think about it. Who gets killed in a revolution first? It's the artists. The artists, the philosophers, the poets, the dreamers, the people that reconstruct the society. We are the danger. We are the threat. So act like it. Act like you are the threat that you are. Because you really are. And they know it. And we can change, literally, we can shift the way that society thinks about itself through art and through our messages. We have the ability to disrupt. So our task is to disrupt and rebuild. And while building, disruption into our long-term strategic planning. Here we are in an area that is made for disruption. It literally gained its fame from disruption. Don't let disruption lie in one sector, and that's tech. We have the ability to disrupt too. So what I would leave you with today is, let's take our values, take our philosophy, take our dreams, take our energy, take our spirit, and disrupt, disrupt, disrupt. Thank you.
Hi, this is Isa Nakazawa, and we're here with Voices of the Community at the Arts for a Better Bay Area Summit 2023. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Glad to be here, Isa.
You don't need an introduction, but can you tell for the folks who don't know who you are and why you're here today?
My name is Jonathan Moscone, and I am the Executive Director of the California Arts Council. And so I'm sort of here to provide what I know and see and hope for the future from a state perspective. But I come from the city, so my heart is here.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations. That was an incredible keynote, and thank you for speaking to us right after you got off stage.
Oh.
One of the things that I really was moved that you spoke about was just like the thriving creative economy, but also this idea of putting our artists to work. Can you say a little bit for folks who didn't get to attend, like what was so essential about that point in your keynote today around connecting artists and the idea of like putting them to work?
Well, I think a lot of it is about what we would call the taxonomy or the classification of artists as super valuable and special and important, but not valued from an essential, from a language that is compared to a nurse or a teacher or someone who works in a grocery store, right? These are people who actually work, right? So we both need to change the narrative, right? And not just artists, but the people who actually support artists, cultural workers, and not just artists themselves, but culture bearers. And that's one thing. But more importantly, what we need to do is to develop the pathways for them to actually have more sustained employment than, say, a grant.
Yeah.
Right? Because grants are great.
Right.
But they're not a living. You cannot make a living off of that. And I work in the funding world now, and I don't know if I would feel like I left this job in a good place if all I did was just make more grants.
It's not a connected, coherent life. It's
That's
just
right.
these like one-off atomized opportunities.
And it feels like it's anxiety-provoking more than it is assuring, you know, because you have to go for the next one and the next one. And so how do we, there are so many pathways that we're not taking advantage of from a state perspective to support artists. I look at teaching artists, which are probably the clearest indicator of like a job that an artist has, right? And now that Prop, I'm going to say 28 passed, $1 billion for teaching artists in this state. That's pretty great. But what about artists in the health industry? There are so much data that proves that when artists are working in hospitals, they reduce the number of days that somebody stays in the hospital, which saves money for the hospital and insurance companies. And if you pay people to do that, you're paying people to support the economy, reduce costs. Absolutely. I know that doesn't sound sexy, but I'll tell you, it's where this is our opportunity. I don't want to rely on whether we have money in the budget or not to be able to support artists. So that's where I stand on it. I know the governor supports this because he believes very strongly in the creative economy, creative workforce. The legislature does. So I think the time is right now, especially during a time of tough budget, where we have to leverage resources, work with Caltrans, work with Department of Health and Human Services, all of our colleagues. How do we bring arts to them to benefit their work? And by doing so, provide work for our artists.
We're halfway through our powerful conversation at the 2023 State of Our Arts and Culture Organization Summit. You have heard from the voices of Maria Jenson, Creative and Executive Director of the SOMARTS Cultural Center, Ralph Remington, Director of Cultural Affairs at the San Francisco Arts Commission, and Jonathan Moscone, Executive Director of the California Arts Council. Thank you to our incredible sponsors and to listeners like you for supporting Voices of the Community. Voices of the Community is made possible by generous support from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, dedicated to ensuring vibrant work is created, new voices are celebrated, and diverse communities have opportunities to thrive. Learn more at zff.org. Voices of the Community is also supported by the Peaceful World Foundation, fostering a culture of global peace through hosted conversation and education. Discover more at peacefulworldfoundation.org. Welcome back to Voices of the Community, where today's conversation at the 2023 State of Our Arts and Culture Organization Summit focuses on how arts organizations have bounced back from the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's continue the discussion.
Before I dive into the specifics, I had a friend the other day tell me that data is the language of the money. And I have not been able to stop thinking about that. I know a lot of artists don't really like numbers. They don't really find use in data, but data is the language of the money. And I think that is really powerful to think about how you talk about your impact, how you talk about not only your money, but numbers of people, right? Numbers is how you get the grants. It's how you get the governmental support. It's how you get the funders, right? So just one of the reasons why I'm kind of a proud data nerd is because I think it's really powerful. There's more stuff in here about overall ticket revenue and donation revenue. I'm not going to go through all of it in this moment. But the other thing I want to point out is TRG were really big proponents of customer topology. So that's looking at recency, frequency, monetary, and growth as far as how your relationship with your patrons, right? How recently are they coming? How often are they coming? How much are they spending? And is their loyalty and their spend with you growing over time, right? That's kind of TRG's big thing. We always joke that we're going to get the patron loyalty ladder. We're all going to get tattoos because that's like our big thing. But we like to look at all of that. And the interesting thing about where we are now is we're getting significantly more brand new customers than we've ever had. We've arts and culture nationwide, right? Which is great. So whatever you're doing in marketing is working. It's getting new people in the door. The bummer flip side of that is the one-time returning customer typology is significantly lower. So you're getting more first-timers in the door, but even less people are coming back than they were in 2019. So that, I think, is a point of that I'm going to try and hammer home the rest of the day, is that new customer retention is something I think we really are underutilizing and underfunding and under-resourcing at this time. Another positive thing at the moment is demographically, we are seeing those new audiences make up more Gen Xers and more millennials than historically were coming, which is great. The bummer flip side of that is that they're not coming in significantly enough percentages to make up for the decrease in the baby boomer generation. We've lost about 25 to 30% of the baby boomers that just haven't come back since pandemic. And unfortunately, if you look at that customer typology, most of those baby boomers are going to be your loyalists, right? Your subscribers, your people that were coming recently, they were coming frequently, they were spending money, and they were growing their support over time. So that dip in percentage of the baby boomer loss is really where I think we're all feeling the revenue strain at the moment. But yes, there are Gen Xers and millennials are coming, so we need to make sure that they come back and we need to reach more of them. One more thing about the Bay Area specific data that I thought was fascinating. And like I said, you'll be able to look at all of this and look at the specific numbers. But as far as ticket sales go, we had a really good holiday season, mostly for ticket sales. But the thing that kind of shines in the Bay Area data specifically for me is you had a really good March and April. I don't know what goes on here in March and April, but apparently a lot that sold tickets. And that is a spike. I don't know if you can see the whole spike, but that's a spike that I'm not seeing anywhere else. So that's very Bay Area specific. I live in Los Angeles, so I'm not far away, but I don't know what's happening here in the early spring, but something exciting.
Is SF Travel in the room? I wonder if that's when they did their push, because they've been doing a lot of pushes with, anyway.
It didn't start until April 21st.
Okay. Shoot, Brenda. I wanted you to take the credit.
I mean, claim it. Yeah, just own it. Yes, and then like I said, the other thing is the average ticket price is a really interesting story. And if I look at all of our markets where we have data that we're collecting, the Bay Area is the only market where the average ticket price is so significantly lower than it was in 2019. So that anecdotally is telling me that there are audience outreach efforts happening, and instead of skyrocketing a lot of tickets, that there are things happening in audience development. That would be my assumption. I would love to hear if that's the case. I'm curious. But I think that's all I've got for you, George.
Hi, my name is Jeff Jones, and I am one of the co-founders of the Queer Cultural Center. And I was also the person that agitated for and successfully created the Cultural Equity Grants Program. And that was 30 years ago. And one of the tendencies that's very clear is that the California Arts Council, which was really the forerunner of multiculturalism in this state, has now become the captive of a bunch of arts bureaucrats where now they're spending 25% on administrative costs. And that's money that used to go to artists. And I think it's really different.
I don't want to interrupt you because your experience is incredibly valid. Can we bring it back to a question, though? Did you have a question for the panel?
Mike, I did have a statement that we should understand that whatever people are saying here, there is this tendency now to fund arts administrators instead of artists. And also, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but, the reputation of YBCA in this town sucks.
We know.
It always has. You've been around for 30 years.
Thank you.
And I hope you could do something.
Can I answer just very, very responsively to this, which is, as a bureaucrat and an arts administrator, we are concerned. I mean, the new leadership at YBCA, and we can't make any promises now about anything other than to say one of the things we're concerned with is the ways in which we sit between arts investment and the money that needs to be in community. Let me say it again. We are not meant to be holders of funds that are best spent by artists themselves or in communities that know how to put that money to better use. We're trying to model those practices through the programs and responsibilities we've taken on, and we're trying to look for the ways in which we can move that money as quickly as possible into community again now, even within the programs that we have. We are in an early assessment of all that work. Lawrence come on in May. I came on around the same time. So we represent an opportunity with Amy and Jody and others in leadership of trying to figure out how to get out of the way of being a siphon of funds in this respect. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think if there are people in our programs who've been working on the guaranteed income program directly and other programs who would say the same things that I'm saying in terms of what they've been learning. We're like months from being able to release some things that I think would be able to speak to the data from these programs and make it compelling for why we should get out of the way. But it is to say we also are stewards of space and are trying to figure out ways in which even that can be done through a position of solidarity and partnership where we are in a different position with respect to how we program. This is not going to be, I don't want to get into a divisive position right now on this at all, because like in San Francisco, whether it's housing, homelessness, or the arts, we can get very divided quickly. But there is a big part of us sitting downtown alongside a bunch of other big cultural institutions, holding space that many others could use just as well as we're trying to use it right now, that are trying to figure out how we open our doors and get out of the way of the scarcity that this feels as an artist to be alone in this community right now. I have nothing to say to you with respect that's concrete at all, other than as a human being to agree with you entirely with respect to the challenge. And that, entirely respect the challenge.
Thank you.
Hi, this is your host, Isa Nakazawa, reporting with Voices of the Community and Bayvac Media here at our studio in Soma. We are talking to arts and culture leaders as part of the Arts for a Better Bay Area's State of the Arts Summit. And our guest today brings a breadth of knowledge and experience as a longtime activist here in the city, working with children's art programs in Hunters Point, a legislative aide working on policy, supervisor of San Francisco's 5th District, and the current director of the City of San Francisco's Grants for the Arts, Vallie Brown. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. And I know you were going to speak at the State of the Arts Summit about Prop E, and you just kind of went into it, but what is the state of it right now? And I know you were going to share a little bit more in depth about it at the State of the Arts Summit. Is there anything left for you to share about it or where it stands?
Yes, Prop E. So, we're still not where we were. And a lot of it's because of conventions and those things coming into town and staying at hotels. We're better than we were a year ago, especially better than we were 2 years ago. But we still don't have where we were in 2019. This year, the city had said to us, you have to fund just on Prop E, because they had been giving us some general funds. They gave us a huge chunk of general fund, and then last year that we had some. But this year they're because of all the needs and things that are happening, they said you need to live within your means kind of thing. And so you have this much money to grant out, which was about $14 million, which is a lot lower, but it's something that we have to do. There's just no way around it. And Prop E still gives us that guaranteed that as long as we don't have another catastrophe where we don't have visitors here going into hotels, it still gives us that guarantee we're going to have funding, some kind of funding, but we have to prioritize.
Got it. And can you speak to the Proposition E, the Arts Impact Endowment funding component that I know is informed by a lot of the, community arts folks? So like, how do they get involved and informed in that process?
Well, I think there's different things, there's different places to go. For us, for me and our department is we keep a temperature on where the funding is on Prop E, right? And what we need to do. I know that John Moscone and others have been really being activists to organize people, to get them to push for certain funding and push for priority funding. For us, as a city funder, I step back a bit, but I also look for other ways that we can get funding, whether that is state funding, federal funding, all of those things that I think that would be really helpful. And I know there's different groups, and you can get online and look for those, that if people want to get involved in that. We always need people we had lined up people to speak when we were looking at getting fund, trying to get the general fund for what was 2 years ago. And no one even had to speak because all the board of supervisors at that meeting, at the budget meeting, said, yeah, let's do that. But you have to get ready to be that activist. Maybe go to the state to really reach out to our national, our federal leaders, our Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein, all of them, to say, we really want you to push this initiative and funding. I think those are things that there are groups that are getting that together and making sure that people have that opportunity to put their voice in there, because the arts has always been a target, and especially you get certain groups and certain political figures in that they take a swipe at the arts. Right. That thinks we're, anybody that's involved in the arts are, not the kind of people they want to vote.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Vallie.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure.
A special thanks to our summit attendees and our guests, Maria Jenson, Ralph Remington, Jonathan Moscone, Jenny Cohn, Carrie McClelland, and Vallie Brown for their insights on arts advocacy. Visit voicesofthecommunity.com and go to Season 1 of Where Arts Meets Impact and explore about our guests and see their work. While you're on our website, we invite you to visit Season 2 with California for the Arts. Stay tuned for Part 2 of our highlight compilation from our Season 1 Arts and Culture series, and stay tuned for our next series, Making the Invisible Visible, as we amplify the voices of our unhoused neighbors and the people and organizations that support them.
Today's episode was made possible through our co-production partnership with Arts for a Better Bay Area at their 2023 State of the Arts Summit. Special thanks to our technical crew, audio and video wizard Eric Estrada, and our co-production partner, Bayvac Media, and their wonderful team, Paula Argoni, Andy Konami, Siobhan Giles, and Clay Go. Thanks to Casey Nance from Citron Studios for the graphics magic. A special thanks to our broadcast partners who help share these important conversations: KSFP, LPFM in San Francisco, KPCA, LPFM in Petaluma, Petaluma Community Public Access TV, Bayvac Media's SF Commons, and PEG Media's Public Access TV Exchange. Thank you for your commitment to amplifying diverse voices and perspectives. Please support these partners and our mission by tuning in and spreading the word. Voices of the Community is made possible by generous support from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, dedicated to ensuring vibrant work is created, new voices celebrated, and diverse communities have opportunities to thrive. Learn more at zff.org. Voices of the Community is also supported by the Peaceful World Foundation, fostering a culture of global peace through hosted conversations and education. Discover more at peacefulworldfoundation.org. And we'd love your support to continue to make shows just like this one. Go to voicesofthecommunity.com and click on the donate button to help us continue to bring you unique voices from our community. Take Voices of the Community with you on the go. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Enjoying the show? Please rate and review us on your favorite app. It helps more people discover these important stories. go to youtube.com/@GeoCoster to watch or listen to all of our past and future episodes. And you can always go to voicesofthecommunity.com and listen and watch our 5 series and from our archives. Have feedback or ideas for shows? We'd love to hear from you. Email George at georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster from San Francisco. On behalf of our team, thank you for joining us. Until next time, remember, your voice matters.